We need to deal with the root of this evil rather than the fruit of this evil. And we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Your vote isn't just affecting you. Your kids' kids are coming. They are going to have to deal with what we choose today.
Start praying to God for wisdom, praying to God for ways that people can start to open their eyes to really the truth that's taking place around them, because this is such a critical moment in history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew.
I'm Sasha Voles.
And I'm Taylor Schlobohm.
We want to be one of your homes for alternative news. There is a major distrust in media today, so you've got to find some of your homes for news that you can trust. And we want to be one of those homes for you for alternative news. We want to cover some of the most pressing topics of the week, and still in the news very heavily, still today, what happened this week. Earlier this week, it was actually Sunday, September 11th, the 15th anniversary of 9/11. Hillary Clinton collapsed.
Yes, and actually I have the article right here. It says pneumonia, the signs, symptoms, and causes and treatments of the life-threatening disease that could alter the U.S. election. It says after Hillary Clinton made an abrupt departure from the 9/11 ceremony, a video showcased her staggering getting into a car. The common disease has become the center of the most divisive political campaign in years. The U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton climbs into her van outside her daughter Chelsea's home in New York. And on September 11, 2016, after Clinton has left the ceremony commemorating the 15th annual September 11th attack, she feels overheated and she ends up collapsing into the vehicle.
Yeah, and this is a big story. This is a really big story, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of different theories with this one, a lot of different directions that this story went. But the fact of the matter is that we do know that Hillary Clinton's people, they have lied to us. We know that. We know that they have said that there is nothing wrong with her health-wise. Actually, even Tim Kaine, the vice president, was calling out people that were trying to talk about Hillary's health in the past.
That's right, Zach. I was looking through this video, and Tim Kaine was talking about alt news sources and InfoWars like Alex Jones, and saying that news sources like this can't be tolerated, that it's leading to a disrespectful America. And this is almost ridiculous if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy.
Well,
the future, if Hillary Clinton is elected, the future vice president of the United States, Tim Kaine, was saying, listen, don't be ridiculous, people. Let's not even bring Hillary's health into question here, because it's not an issue. Yeah. And now, these conspiracy theories are proving to be true. And then they went on, like you said in your article, Sasha, they went on to say, but listen, Hillary Clinton's people, listen, she's not sick. She was just overheated. She was overheated. Mm-hmm. And now we know that was a lie. It was a lie. I mean, it is what it is. And then they said, well, listen, it was because of pollen. There was a lot of, the pollen count in the air was very high, and it caused her to collapse. And now we know for sure that was a lie, because she had been previously, not before that day that she collapsed, she had previously been diagnosed with pneumonia. All right. Now, even if it is pneumonia, and there's a lot of speculation, fool me once, hey, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. All right, the list goes on and on. Even if it is pneumonia, which I don't know, it could be, it could not be. But there was pictures of Hillary Clinton at that memorial hugging children, hugging kids. If she knew she had pneumonia, why would she be doing that?
I have some articles, and I've done some research that some are even saying that her symptoms could lead to, stiff muscles, coughing, poor balance, and rhythmic muscle contractions could be signs of Parkinson's. And Hillary's health problems have reached the point where they no longer can cover up. It's becoming more and more evident, and it's not just us who see the problem. Zach, I have an article here that says that ex-Secret Service agent who protected Clinton shares nonpartisan rundown of why her fainting video really scares him. It says here that Gary Byrne, who protected the first family, the Bill Clinton family, was was making comments and saying that the moment between the Secret Service van pulling up to the 9/11 memorial service and her getting into the car is what really scares him, because there was no sense of urgency. No one was trying to get her in the van. In situations like this, Burns says every second counts. He's quoted
because they have a protocol. They have
Yes.
a certain protocol that he's breaking this down, saying, nope, there's stuff that's inaccurate here.
There's a protocol that they have to go by. It says that the Secret Service doesn't like to wait. Standing still in the eyes of the service is waiting for an attack to happen. And another protocol, like Zach was mentioning, was that after she was put in the van, she wasn't sent directly to the emergency room. She went to her daughter's apartment.
Very odd.
And finally, I'm just going to conclude with this, is that Burns said that she's putting herself, her party, and her Secret Service detail at risk. Her health is directly tied to the health of our country, and we deserve treatment.
Wow. Yeah, Clinton's health is no longer a background issue to this presidential race. It has been put on the tables, and it is not going anywhere. There was actually even a recent poll. I mean, it's just shocking to see what people are thinking here in America, that it was, I believe it was close to 30% of Americans believe that Hillary Clinton will not even be here in 2020 because she'll pass away from her, her ailments. You said Parkinson's. That's really interesting. I've been hearing some things about that, and my goodness, a lot of people in the prophetic world are saying an October surprise. My gosh, I mean, what an October surprise that would be if something took place with Hillary, whether she dies or steps down. I don't know.
What happens?
Yeah, exactly. What happens? And I'm going to address that in just a moment. But even with Parkinson's, what's crazy is that it's not. She wasn't overheated. Okay, it wasn't pollen. It wasn't some of these other things that they were saying. They're saying now it was pneumonia, and that is a possibility actually, because if you are right with what you were reading about Parkinson's, the Mayo Clinic actually talks about some of the things that Parkinson's can lead to, or a side effect of this is actually pneumonia. Yeah. Because you actually you lose control of some of your basic functions, and even the being able to swallow and feeling like liquid like water, whatever, like even like saliva in your mouth dripping, like going down your throat. You can't cough. It destroys some of your very basic functions, which would actually describe why she has all these
and her balance
fits.
In that video, you see she has to be literally put in the van.
Yeah, so it is interesting, and like I said, hey, keep your eyes open, because I think there's another trick in the books before the election is going to take place. But what happens? What happens if she does drop out? What happens if I don't want her to die. I mean, oh my goodness, but what if it does happen? There's protocol in the Republican Party for if the nominee would die, but the protocol in the Democratic Party is actually very, very, very vague. So if something would take place, we really have no idea what could happen.
Wow.
And there's many different people that could take the place. It could be Joe Biden. It could be Bernie Sanders. It could be Michelle Obama, or it could be, which is how most likely the Republicans would handle it if their nominee was to pass away, would be the vice president. Mm-hmm. Vice president. And that's Tim Kaine. Okay, Tim Kaine. Here we go. So you have Joe Biden. If Joe Biden, well, you have another 4 to 8 years of President Obama. If it's Michelle Obama, well, you're going to have 4 to 8 more years of President Obama. If it's Bernie Sanders, then you're going to have a socialist as a president. You can't make this stuff up. And we're seeing the final results of socialism in Latin America.
Absolutely. We're looking at Venezuela, and we're seeing the complete depravity of that nation and the fact that the people are starving in the streets. Are we asking for that here in America? I don't know, but this is the polls that we're seeing with these different candidates possibly stepping into office if Hillary isn't able to take that spot.
I want to dive in a little bit to Tim Kaine, because Tim Kaine kind of masquerades as a progressive Christian. He's got a funny man. I mean, kind of like a weird little leprechaun type of feel. I mean, if you just look at me, just not quite right. Just really interesting characteristics about just the way he carries himself. But he has radical roots. I'm going to go on a ledge here and say that Tim Kaine's a communist.
Wow.
Tim Kaine is a communist. Let me tell you why. I have an article here from The Hill. Now, this is This would be the vice president if Hillary Clinton is elected. Nothing happens to her. Tim Kaine. But if she steps down or passes away, Tim Kaine is the vice president. He could literally become the president of the United States. According to the media, Tim Kaine took a life-transforming mission trip to Latin America in 1980. We know this. Now, conveniently left out are these stories or the radical reality of the Cold War in Latin America and Tim Kaine's Soviet sympathizing mentors. His mentors were Soviet sympathizers. Soviet. This is talking about Soviet. Now Russia. This was the Soviet Union. It says, in fact, whatever Kaine's intentions were, he more likely did not. He basically didn't meet Jesus Christ in 1980 in Latin America. He more likely met Karl Marx.
Oh, wow.
Now, it says this. Connect the dots with a little history, and an alarming picture emerges of Kaine's adventures with radicals and revolutionaries in the 1980s Latin America. Reports indicate that while he was in Honduras, Mr. Kaine embraced an interpretation of the gospel. Okay, this is where he claims to be a Christian and everything, and embraced an interpretation of the gospel known as liberation theology. Liberation theology. Study it, Google it, and you're going to find very quickly that this is a false gospel that was developed solely by the KGB to infiltrate churches in the West to make them sympathizers, if you will, of communism, to be pro-Soviet Union. And they actually sent missionaries to Latin America to spread this thing called liberation theology. I'm going to keep going with this. So liberation theology really has been called Christian Marxism. And Marxism is the political and economic theories by Karl Marx, later developed by their followers to form the basics for theory and practice of communism. This wasn't mainstream Catholic thought at the time. It was radical Marxist ideology at odds with the church. This is what he believes. The Pope in the United States, but supported by the Soviet Union. Now, we just got a book in. It was written a couple of years ago. It's called Information. And the main author, it was a dual project, but the main author was Lieutenant General, his name is Ion Mihai Pachapo. Ion Mihai Pachapo. Now, who is this man? He's a very, very interesting fella. He was a former 3-star general in the Securitate. This is the secret police of communist Romania, okay? He was a 3-star general within that. He was a former Romanian spy chief. That's what he was.
Wow.
He was a former Romanian spy chief, and he defected to the United States in July 1978 following President Jimmy Carter's approval for his request of political asylum. This is known history. So basically, he's saying, listen, I'm going to tell you some of my secrets back in 1978. I'm going to tell you some of my secrets if you give me political asylum, take me to the United States, and protect me. And he still lives here in the United States, and he lives under the protection of the CIA. Now, he wrote an article in 2015 to the National Review, and the article that he wrote, he's still alive, living in the United States, and he wrote this: The Secret Roots of Liberation Theology. Remember, this was Lieutenant General Ion Mihai Pachapo, which was the highest-ranking Soviet bloc official ever to defect to the West, to tell us their secrets. And he says, history often repeats itself. And if you've lived 2 lives, as I have done, you have a good chance of seeing the reenactment with your own eyes. Liberation theology, of which not much has been heard for 2 decades, is back in the news. But what is not being mentioned is its origins. It was not invented by Latin American Catholics. It was developed by the KGB. The man who is now the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, secretly worked for the KGB under the codename Mikolov and spent 4 decades promoting liberation theology, which we at the top of the Eastern European intelligence community nicknamed Christian Marxism. And in 1971, the KGB sent Kirill to Geneva as an emissary of the Russian Orthodox Church to the World Council of Churches. Now, it was while he was there and he was sent to Latin America that he put down these deep roots there. And it was in this time frame that Tim Kaine, vice presidential nominee under Hillary Clinton, He's a believer. He's a public believer in liberation theology, which is a communist view. And so basically what this view boils down to, it's an interpretation of the gospel that they believe the best way to interpret the gospel, the most effective way to interpret the gospel as a Christian is if you were poor. Is if you're poor. And they have a disdain for the wealthy. So they don't like the wealthy. And they believe to be a true Christian, you have to view the gospel through the eyes of the poor. This is communism. And this is, if something would happen to Hillary Clinton, lots of names on the table. We only have time to discuss really one name today, and that's Tim Kaine. So I don't really feel too good about this.
Even if there's a small chance he becomes a VP or maybe even president, Zach, are you saying that there could be maybe a few communist implications or communist ideals that might come into play in America? Inherently or not?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we know that he is a believer in liberation theology, and that is a communist view of Christianity that was developed by the KGB. Now, is he going to would he implement communist things in America? Yeah, I believe so. He's not going to come out and say I'm a communist in the same way Bernie Sanders is saying I'm a socialist, in the same way Hillary Clinton is a socialist, but she doesn't come out and say it. Okay, so Tim Kaine is a communist, but he's not going to come out and say I am a communist. Right. Now, here's the thing. We consciously and even unconsciously, if you will, we make decisions based on what our foundation in life is. We make decisions based on what our worldview is. So whenever he would be helping create policies, he'd be filtering it through a communistic type of ideology. So yes, we would see communists in a real way, in a more real way, in America.
Wow.
Wow. Now, let's see here. Lots of other things happening in the news. Sasha recently was talking about Congress in the news. Now, we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
About here in early October, October 1st, we're basically going to be giving away the final portion of control that America has over the internet without any congressional approval at all.
Well, and it's shocking because the American people, who has really heard of this? Besides if you're watching alternative news or if you're really researching for yourself, you're not hearing this on mainstream media. You're not hearing our politicians campaigning, the campaign trails talking about this. You're not hearing anybody speaking about that we're giving away one of our biggest assets as a nation. We're giving away our final portion of that and our final sharehold of that and saying, okay, well, we just believe the UN will manage it better. And so along with China and Russia, I think that they can make better decisions than we can. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for the American people? Whether you're Christian, whether you have a private organization, what does that mean for us? Because then that means that the UN will be censoring our internet, censoring everything that's being put out there, censoring and figuring out, do we think that this abides by what we say can be on the internet since they own it now? So now this is really, it's come to a point where we have to look and say, we have a few more weeks before this bill is passed or before this transition happens. And so we have to say, we have to get involved. We have to write Congress. We have to stand up and make our voice heard because this is a major deal that's going to happen and it will change our world as we know it.
Now, here's what's so crazy is that initially whenever it was put on the table, then whenever a few people did find out about what was taking place with the internet, President Obama was actually bypassing Congress, it's actually to give away government property without first getting the congressional approval is completely against our Constitution. You understand that?
Yeah.
It's completely against our Constitution. What President Obama was trying to do was completely against our Constitution. Should it surprise you? Well, I don't know, because our current administration has nearly completely abandoned the Constitution anyway. But right now, because some people are actually yelling from the mountaintops, if you will, about, hey, listen, can we do something? This was posted from the Wall Street Journal, and it says this: Congress can save the internet. Wall Street Journal, Congress can save the internet. It says President Obama wants this to be the last month of an open, uncensored internet guaranteed by the U.S. government. Okay? Guaranteed. They're like, we have control. We have control over the internet right now. The U.S. government does. And his plan to end American stewardship would hand new power to authoritarian governments offended by the internet as we know it. Now, Senator Ted Cruz, who has pushed hard against the plan since it was announced 2 years ago, said in this article he's cautiously optimistic of what Congress will decide to do. Legislators will block it through a rider to the federal budget. The basic proposition of keeping the internet free has united Republicans across the spectrum and should also unite Democrats with Republicans. It says top Senate and House Republicans have signaled that they will ensure U.S. oversight continues to protect the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers, or it's called ICANN, I-C-A-N-N, and its stakeholders. So it's saying, listen, we're going to protect it, and that's the portion of the internet, the final portion that they're going to be giving away. Now, here's what we need to know. If President Obama does give the internet away, this decision is irreversible. It's an irreversible decision that could result in a less transparent and accountable internet governance regime or provide an opportunity for an enhanced role of authoritarian nation states. We're giving away our power.
Wow.
We're divvying it up. We have too much power. We're divvying it up to other countries that we don't trust.
Oh.
Countries like Russia, countries like China. Do you want them censoring what you can and cannot say on the internet? Do they believe in our amendments? Do they believe in our Constitution?
Freedom of speech?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do they believe in our freedom of speech? Of course not. Communist China? I mean, do you want them controlling what's on the internet? Absolutely not. Now, it says the Constitution says Congress must approve the sale of government property. They have to.
Wow.
And so, like I said in the beginning, there was an attempt to actually just override and just go beyond Congress, but because of your voice, through social media, of letting your friends and family know what's going on, something is taking place, and there's going to be a vote that takes place. And I want to urge you to contact your congressman and let him know what you believe should be done with this. And I'll tell you what should be done. America should stay in power with this decision of the internet and not give it away to foreign authorities.
Absolutely. And make sure that you write in while you still can, because this is a very small window of time. And once this is done, like Zach said, it is irreversible. So you have to make sure, get involved today. Right after you see this, start writing right now, because there is a very small window of time.
Now, in other news, Sasha, I know that you pulled an article talking about the NCAA is pulling some basketball games.
Yes, I have an
North
article
Carolina.
right here. It says the NCAA has pulled 7 championship events from North Carolina, including opening weekend's men's basketball tournament games for the coming year due to a state law that some say can lead to discrimination against LGBT people. In a case released Monday, the NCAA says the decision by its board of governors came because of the cumulative actions taken by the state concerning civil rights protections. This decision is consistent with the NCAA's long-standing core values of inclusion, student athletic well-being, and creating a culture of fairness, said Georgia Tech President G.D. Bud Peterson, the chair board of governors.
You know, these issues, we haven't been faced with these issues are being shoved in the face of the American population, and it's causing people to make decisions. The people that didn't know quite where they stood on a lot of different issues. What's happening in America right now is the line is being drawn in the sand, and you can't be in the middle anymore. It's almost like impossible to stay there. The issues are so right there, and there's so much in all of our conversations that it's actually forcing you to decide where you stand and where you don't stand. And a lot of people that I had no idea where they stood, I'm quite shocked. I mean, the NCAA, college basketball, is saying we're going to pull millions and millions and millions of dollars from North Carolina, which is one of nearly 20 states that have really have made the decisions like North Carolina has. And they're saying, no, we want males in the women's bathroom. If they identify as a woman, we want to put them in the bathroom. And if you don't do that, we're going to pull millions and millions and millions of dollars away from your state. Where's the outcry? Where's the boycotts?
And I mean, Rick Joyner has some thoughts on this decision. He says here that the NBA canceled its All-Star game scheduled for Charlotte this year. And then the NCAA pulled a number of events out of North Carolina in boycott of the HB-2 bill. Even though North Carolina is just one more than 20 states that has a similar bill that is considered basic protection of especially women and children's rights to privacy, this has started talks about a nationwide boycott of the NBA and the NCAA sporting events, as even corporations siding with the LGBTQ agenda. We'll catch where this goes, but it seems to be getting legs. And not only him, but we here at the Rev in the News can see that this is just the beginning of an agenda that's taking place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like he said, it's like this thing is growing some legs, and it's going somewhere. And I can't really boycott college basketball because I've already kind of been doing it for 25 years because I've really never watched college basketball, so I can't really get involved with something like that. But there's actually we have just a couple of minutes left, and that was a quote from Rick Joyner. And I want to talk about something else that Rick Joyner recently said on his Facebook page, and he was discussing an article from usnews.com about something America rates pretty high and actually third on the list, but it's something that we really don't want to be on the list at all with. And it is a depressing, well, no pun intended, but it is a depressing article. It deals with depression, but it ends with an encouraging note from him. And I want you to leave today's program with an encouraging note. But let's start off with this article. Here's the ending thought with Rick Joyner. U.S. finally ranks third in the world for something, but I don't think it's what we wanted. According to a report in usnews.com, the U.S. ranked third for unipolar depressive disorders, just after India and China. India and China and the United States are also the countries most affected by anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder, according to the World Health Organization. Of course now, and the big question is, why? America? I mean, think about all the things that we have in America. And yet we struggle with depression. We struggle with, there's not a country in the world that has more than the things that the average American has. I mean, the poorest of Americans would still be considered rich in most third world countries. So the question is, why? And he goes on and says, no reason for this was given in the article, but a comprehensive study done years ago shockingly concluded that our possessions have zero to do with personal happiness. A study done that your possessions have zero to do with personal happiness. My first thought was that certainly our stuff contributed some, but this study was convincing, concluding that the happiest people in the world tended to be those who lived the most simple lives. Wow. And in a complicated world right now that we're living in, take heart those words. The study concluded the happiest people in the world tend to be those who live the most simple lives. As long as they had adequate food, clothing, and shelter, and that true happiness is linked almost totally to relationships. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
True happiness, it's dedicated to having the basic needs in your life and just some good relationships. The Apostle Paul said that nearly 2,000 years ago, actually, in 1 Timothy 6, 6 through 10, he says, now godliness without contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and we can carry nothing out of it. Having food and clothing, with these things we should be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare. So those who desire to be rich, you're going to fall into a temptation. You're going to fall into a snare. And into many foolish and harmless lusts which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, for which some have strayed from the faith because of their greed and pierced themselves through many sorrows. And he ends with this. This does not mean that as loving parents we should not want to provide well for our loved ones, but there is a ditch on each side of the path of life. There is poverty on one side and extravagance on the other. A key is to find the place of moderation so that instead of just accumulating stuff, we can experience one of the great sources of joy, generosity, and being able to help others. This is important, but the ultimate answer is to finding true peace in our life, which is required for true happiness, is to know and serve the Prince of Peace. He is the rock that if we build our lives on, no storm will be able to tear down our house. Our life here is to be built on the rock of Jesus Christ. Quit trying to complicate it. Attempt to live a more simple life. And if your foundation is built not on the things of this world, but if your foundation is built on the rock, which is Jesus Christ, when the storms come and the world starts shaking, you will not be shaking because your foundation is firm, and that's on Jesus Christ. Well, this has been Revelation in the News, one of your homes for alternative news. We'll see you next week.